Today we're talking with Don Johnson. He is a real estate mogul, I would say, in Oregon. He used to be an executive chef. He transferred all of his knowledge over to real estate, and we're going to have a key conversation with Don Johnson. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So,
I don't know if a real estate mogul is appropriate, but I'll take it.
well, you make up your own lines about what you think you are.
Okay.
But I would say you're a mogul just because of all the deals that you've done and how extensive your knowledge in real estate is. You're doing how much in real estate the last couple of years?
Last year, we had just under 50 million in volume, so it was a good year. It was a tough year, but good.
That's amazing for not having the high price luxury listings.
Yeah, interesting. Our average sales price was actually down. It was under $500,000, so it's not selling a bunch of luxury properties, although that would be nice. But I'm a firm believer that we give the same service level at every price range, and some of the lower price ranges are underserved sometimes.
Sure. So let's start off with where you grew up. What was your childhood kind of like?
It was a little tough. So I grew up in a little town called Gales Creek, which is still a little town. It's about 8 miles west of Forest Grove. My grandparents homesteaded there. Their house is still there. And that's kind of where I started my life. Lived there till I think I was 5. And then we moved to Forest Grove and, lived most of my teenage life in Forest Grove. And went to chef school in 1985 and left town for a while. So
what made you decide to go to chef school? What was the determining factor?
My parents had owned some restaurants. We actually had a few at the same time. And when I was young, you didn't get a chance to decide if you wanted to work in the family business. You just worked in the family business. So between picking berries and working in the family restaurant, it was something that was interesting to me. But I also knew that if you wanted to really make good money in the restaurant business, you couldn't do it, being a prep cook. So I went to, I studied with Horst Mager and got a degree in 1985 and left town.
So when you were working with your family, they had a restaurant, mm-hmm. And what made you decide at some point I'm going to do this? I'm going to get my culinary license.
I guess it was because I hated picking berries. That's for sure. I think I quit picking berries every year I tried because I hated getting up at 4 a.m. and riding a bus out to pick berries. So when I started washing dishes, being a prep cook and all that at the restaurant, it's funny because the restaurant business is a hard business. But it's like having a party every day of your life, especially on the weekends. Everybody comes to eat and, celebrate. So I really like that atmosphere. And I, be honest, I like food. So, I figured that was a good shot. And it gave me a lot of great work ethic. It really did. Because the restaurant business, a lot like real estate, it's evenings and weekends. You're working when other people typically aren't. And I think that helped me a lot in the real estate business because when I decided to become a broker, I'd already worked my tail off, and I figured I could transfer those skills into real estate.
Which is a great question. I was gonna ask is what made you decide to go from culinary arts to real estate?
So I quit doing the chef thing and moved back to Portland and didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I had some real estate, and I didn't have, I had a savings, but I didn't have a quote unquote job. So I figured I'd better do something to create some money. So funny thing, I was told that I should not like realtors. So I was a for sale by owner, and I didn't know what I didn't know, but I thought I did. And long story short, in trying to sell those properties, I had a realtor approach me that, of course, wanted me to list with them. And long story short, we ended up making a deal, and in that process, I had written some of my own counteroffers. And the managing broker for that agent called me up and says, "Hey, are you a realtor?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to be a realtor. I don't know what that is." Next thing you know, I'm interviewing with him, and I became a realtor.
So real estate kind of fell in your lap then.
It did. It really did.
After buying properties and owning properties and renting properties.
Yeah. So when I traveled a lot, there was a guy, and I won't name names, but he had a cable TV real estate course. And so because I traveled and kind of lived in hotels and didn't have a lot of stuff to do on my downtime, I would study these real estate manuals. And looking back, some of that stuff I don't even think was legal, but I didn't know at the time. But it got me really interested in real estate. So even while I was traveling and working in restaurants, I was interested in it. I just never thought it would get me to where, I am now. Because, this is going to be my 39th year in real estate. And I look back and I think, man, I don't even, a lot of that time is a blur. I don't know how that all happened, but it's been a blessing.
So 39th year, so that makes it around 92?
1991.
91, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So previous to 1991, where were you living? What were you doing as a chef?
Well, we had restaurants all up and down the West Coast. So far north as Bellingham, as far south as Southern California, Cabo. And I just traveled through all the chain. I didn't really have a home. I lived in hotels, or sometimes I'd live in one of the managers' houses. And it was really exciting because, we'd review these restaurants and we'd pick out all the food and the wine list. And, it was a chance for me to learn a lot of the things that I like and don't like with food and liquor, because whatever you could think of, you could try. And food purveyors would bring everything to you because they would want you to serve it in your restaurant, so they bring everything. And that was really, really a good time in life.
So in 1991, how long did it take for you to do your first actual real estate deal that was not your own properties?
Funny story. So in the brokerage I was in, they had a bullpen at the bottom. And that's where like cubicles were, the only real tool you had at that time, this is before, internet was really a thing, was your phone. And so you would be with a bunch of other realtors in this bullpen and everybody's making calls, and it's a pretty competitive environment. And the broker had made a deal that said, hey, if you did a certain number of transactions, you got to get out of this bullpen and you could move upstairs and have an office. And I knew in my first month that I could not last too long in this bullpen because it was insane. And so my first month I had 8 listings and got to move out of that bullpen literally my second month.
So tell us about your first listing.
I still remember it. It was a house in Cornelius. I can't remember the address off the top of my head. But keep in mind, my average sales price my first year was like $30,000. So commission checks were not huge. And, you could buy a new home for 60 grand, So this first house, the guy was a walk-in into the office. We used to have floor time back then, so whoever was on floor time got the lead. And he was selling his house and moving to Eugene. I listed it, and mind you, back then to list a house was literally 1/2 of one page. It was not like it is today. And we got an offer on it in 30 days, I think, and it closed for $45,000. And I just thought, oh man, this is it.
You're living the life.
Living the life.
But wasn't the commission for that kind of small change as far as being a chef?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it was, Thankfully I'd saved money because, my salary before, when I moved into real estate, was not the same. And, back then, we didn't have buyer brokers, we didn't have all that. So everybody that worked for this broker, all the business technically went in his name, and you couldn't really represent a buyer like you can now. You could only represent the seller. So by the time, you got your commission check on a $45,000 sale and then split half of it with the broker and took your expenses out, it was not a lot of money.
So was every deal half of it went to the
50,
broker?
50, yeah.
So a little different than how it is now for most real estate agents.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say maybe 92, 94, somewhere in there, that's when the desk fee model came out. And that's where, if you write a check to the broker on day one, you get 100% of your commission from that time forward. That really wasn't an option yet. And, I quickly figured out that giving half of my money to the broker, wasn't really a great deal. And so I had moved from there to a company called Equity Group. And it was all history from there.
So moving forward, when did you first leave your current brokerage and go to the next one, so on and so forth?
I think I probably left the first brokerage in '92. It wasn't really long because I had really good success. I mean, my first year in real estate, I was, one of the biggest realtors in the region, and some of the people that I had in my life at that time, other realtors, are still realtors today. So, it was a lot of luck, a lot of hard work. But then when the desk fee model came out and everybody was talking about, the equity group, I figured out the math real quick that was the better option.
We'll stick with real estate for a little bit here. What is we'll get into some fun questions. What is the most ridiculous thing a client has asked you?
Oh my gosh.
Is there one that you can single out?
There's, the interesting thing about the real estate business, people ask, what's the worst that could happen? And, I never answer that question because you just never know. There's so many variables. And I've had a lot of great clients and a lot of great transactions, but I've also had some that were stuff that you just can't make up. One that comes to mind is I was showing a house on First Street in Hillsborough, and it was a vacant home. And back then, you had a lockbox key. You had to call the agent to set it up. And they didn't tell us that this house was empty, but there was a coffin in the living room. And so, little off-putting when you walk in. There's a coffin on a stand in the living room, and everything else is gone. But the buyer ended up buying the house and wanted the coffin included, so that was a pretty weird one.
Did you get a story as to why the coffin was there?
I don't even recall, but it was one of those weird things. Thankfully, it was empty, so that was a good thing. But yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing happens to you a lot, though. I mean, not the coffin, but I mean, I know that you have a record of finding, non-working cars.
Yeah. Stolen cars, stolen buses.
Stolen buses.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens a lot on subdivision land. It's funny, or rural. Had one time, hired a guy to come clear the property of this giant blackberry bush, and sure enough, in the middle of this blackberry bush was a car, and turns out that car had been stolen sometime in the 1980s and never recovered. Well, we found it. Yeah.
Did you turn that into the police?
Oh, yeah. They came and towed it off.
Yeah. So going on that, what is the scariest time that you've had in real estate? Not necessarily money-wise, but...
One time I was showing a house on, it was either Fern Hill or Bald Peak. It was a tenant-occupied house. And this was back when you used to put your client in the car. And yeah, funny story. So I had just bought a BMW that I absolutely loved, and it was a red 325i, two-door with tan leather interior, and I was so proud of this car.
That was the car I wanted when I was a kid.
Oh,
that was
dude,
exactly.
I remember the day I bought it. That's a whole different story. But so I take my client. We're going to go see this property. It was tenant occupied, and we had called like every day for a week in advance because we knew the tenant was, was kind of an interesting situation, but we wanted to make sure they were aware that we were going to be there. And so we show up on the day to show it, and the tenant's there, and they won't let us in, right? And so this tenant is pretty hostile. And my buyer's like, oh, don't worry, I'll just look through the windows and we'll get out of here. And so every window that he goes to, the tenant is on the other side of the window, just yelling and screaming, and this is a female tenant, by the way.
And she's just following him
from
inside
around.
the house.
Yeah, and there's a lot of windows. So he'd go to a window, be peeking in. She'd be just ready to just knock him out. By the time he gets around to the back of the house, the back door is open, and this tenant proceeds to just beat my client to a pulp. And she's a little gal, right? And he's a pretty decent sized guy. And he doesn't even try to stop her from beating him up. He's just like, we have permission to be here. Long story short, she totally bloodies him up, right? And so we're going to leave, and this guy's got blood all over him. And I'm in my brand new car, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't, I got to get him out of here. I can't let him ride in my car. So I ended up taking off my socks and letting him blot the blood off of him so he could get in my car.
Did you take him to the hospital?
Yeah, I think we ended up going to the Forest Grove emergency room, and he got a few stitches, and
I mean, I would imagine, did he press charges on her?
I don't think he did, because I think, if I remember right, I think he bought the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he still bought the house.
Yeah, because he was on a mission then. He was going to buy that house and get rid of her, and yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's some scary situation.
And I remember just thinking, it's bad. I hope he didn't get blood in my car,
And did he?
No.
No.
Thankfully, I had good socks on that day.
Had to buy new socks after that.
Yeah, for sure. I let him keep the socks.
So, same question, but for kitchen. So, as a chef, what was the
Oh my gosh.
funniest thing that ever happened?
Lots of stuff. I mean, the restaurant business is interesting. I mean, a lot of great people work there. And, I was pretty close with the owners of this company. And, my direct boss was, became a really great friend. And, we did a lot of fun stuff together. I remember one time a radio station that we worked with was having a promotion to give away a scooter, right?
Okay.
And they left this scooter in one of our bars as a promotion. Well, somehow, some way, somebody got a good idea that it would be great to ride this scooter inside the dining room. And they left the keys in it, bad mistake. Long story short, we took turns jumping this scooter off of this thing called the mezzanine into the dining room. We cleared out all the tables, and we're literally riding this thing inside the restaurant. Left black marks on the brand new carpet. I mean, bad. And I'm friends with one of the guys still today. Had the music on really loud, riding the scooter, and guess who shows up? The owner.
The owner of the restaurant.
The owner of the whole entire chain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was.
Did he take turns as well?
Needless to say, he wasn't very happy about it, but my direct boss is like giving me the fist bumps, like, dude, that was awesome. Yeah.
And then scariest time in the restaurants.
One time at one of our restaurants, it was a location that would get a lot of snow, right? And when I say a lot of snow, I'm talking feet. So we sometimes would get snowed into the restaurant. And so my bar manager at the time thought it was a good idea to go out and invite some gals from the neighborhood to come hang out at this restaurant and have drinks with us. Long story short, some of those girls weren't old enough to drink, and their dad showed up with a pistol ready to kill everybody. So yeah, that was probably the scariest.
That's kind of crazy.
I'll tell you though, being locked in a restaurant for like a week's time, snowed in. I mean, we had all the food, all the drinks. At the time, the March Madness was playing.
Oh, yeah.
And the satellite dish was bigger than this room, and it was packed in snow. So we'd always, do rock paper scissors. So who was going to go out and dig out the satellite dish to turn it to get a different channel? Yeah.
Yep. Did you have a manual turn crank, or was it an automatic?
No, manual.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like.
I grew up with the same thing. We had a manual one, and
the dish was bigger than this room.
Exactly.
I mean, it was crazy. And then when it was all packed around snow, you had to like dig it out.
Yeah.
Funny part about that part of my life is at the time, I lived in a A-frame in a little town called Thawnskin. And the guy that I rented the top of this A-frame from was a writer for the National Enquirer. Okay. And talk about eccentric. This guy, because we would go down and, we would have drinks with him and talk to him, and all over his walls everywhere he'd have all these articles about aliens and alien babies and all this stuff. And I swear this guy literally believed a lot of this stuff because he was the most eccentric guy. And this place would get snowed in. I mean, he would be locked into this A-frame for who knows how long. Oh, sure. But he was a pretty accomplished writer for the National Enquirer.
Wow.
Super interesting.
How long did you live there?
Only a few months. Yeah.
Just while you were working in that restaurant, or?
Yep, because there was no real hotels to stay in, because usually wherever the location I'd go, I'd stay in a hotel close to the restaurant.
Right. That's amazing.
Another side story on that, when I lived in Seattle, we were living in a hotel near the restaurant in Seattle. And this hotel had I think it was a Denny's or some kind of diner across the street. And we would go over there and have drinks after work. And I had this one guy who was, he was kind of a jack of all trades. He was an older guy. He would do a lot of the labor when we were converting restaurants and whatnot. But he was a little bit of a loose cannon. So I get a call from the restaurant one night saying, hey, you got to come get your guy out of the bar. He's causing problems. And I knew exactly who they were talking about. So I go over there. Long story short, he had been Indian leg wrestling a lady in the parking lot. And so we got kicked out of that place and we could never go back. Yeah.
Indian leg racing.
Yeah, dude, I mean, that's a lost art for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't make up the stories that you have. If someone was looking to change careers, what would be your first advice? No matter what the career is, what would be your first advice to someone saying, I've been in this career for so long, I want to go here?
I always find it interesting what people do for a living because, there's a lot of things, especially today, where you can make money that, probably didn't even exist 20 years ago.
Sure.
But if I was to give somebody advice, I would just recommend that it's something they love. Like when I look back on my life, I used to think I had to go to work, and now I'm blessed enough to get to work. And, when you love what you do, you really don't work. And, in real estate, for example, it can be very stressful. There's a lot to it. But if you dread it, you're not going to ever be super successful in it because you just hate what you do. So whether that's, an influencer or, a mechanic, a plumber, whatever, if you love that, that's the key. Because money comes and goes and, but, you only have so much time on this planet. And if you don't love what you do, you shouldn't do it. You should go find what you love.
And I think that really speaks to your life too, because you loved being a chef.
Yeah.
And whether you knew it or not, when you didn't know it, you love being a real estate agent.
I do. I absolutely
you love the
it.
work.
Yeah. I mean, what I love the most about real estate is it's never the same. There's challenges that sometimes you never see coming. I mean, there's a direct path from, here to here in most real estate transactions, but there's a lot that can happen in between. And I find the human element fascinating, whether that's other realtors that I help or, clients. It's just fascinating the stories that they have and, how they got there. And I really love that part of this business.
And going back to when you switched careers, what was the moment of while you were a chef that made you realize I need something else?
I was just tired of traveling. I mean, it sounds really great. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but, never having a quote unquote home and living in hotels, it's fun for a while, but, it tends to grind on you. And I was lucky enough that, all the restaurants I worked in were up and down the West Coast, and I'm from, the Portland area. So I would always come home, visit family, see friends, but then I'd be off again somewhere else. And I really missed being able to have a home base, if you will.
We're gonna stick with real estate now because that is your passion. You've been in it for
I love it.
39 years.
Yeah.
So for agents looking to level up their career, what advice would you give them? Man,
that's a multifaceted question, but I think it all starts with mindset. It really does, because there's unlimited potential in this career, but it's not as easy as it looks, especially now. I mean, when I got into this business, things were different. Interest rates were more, but prices were a lot less. You could buy homes on contract. You could do creative things that you just can't do today. And, prices, I tell my kids this all the time, like $500,000 sounds like a lot, but in my kids' life, they're going to say, I only paid $500,000 for this house. Because when I look back at all the properties that I owned in my life, it's hard to believe. I owned a house one time that I bought for $11,000, blindly assumed a VA loan, and it was a, mid-century modern ranch on a third of an acre. That's mind-blowing today. You can't even buy a water meter for $11,000. So, if you wanted to scale, scaling is the hardest part of any business. It requires help from other people. It requires the right mindset. It requires a skill set that gets you there. And I think whether you're, an HVAC guy or a plumber or whatever, you can be really good at doing a thing, but most people aren't good at doing everything. And so you just figure out what that one thing is you're good at and try to outsource, the things that you're not good at. And in real estate, there's things that require a license. There's things that require you to be involved. But there's a lot of things that we do that don't require a license that we tend to get stuck in because you're good at it, right? So if you're good at whatever, making postcards, you spend all your time making postcards when your license pays you a lot more to go make deals.
When during your time as a real estate agent did you realize that you were building more than just a career?
Boy, that's tough. So I would say the first time when I was a newer realtor, there was a realtor in town that it used to be big to advertise in the Sunday Oregonian. And when you opened up the Sunday Oregonian, you'd see this guy's ads everywhere. Every category, every city. He had a tagline that was always in bold. And it was expensive to advertise in the paper at that time. And it always fascinated me how was this guy able to do this, right? And so I remember I called him. And at first, he wouldn't meet with me, but I persisted. And he eventually met with me. And I remember this. We walked into his house. He had this big grand piano. We sat there and had coffee. And I was just amazed at, the level of wealth this guy had. And he kind of explained to me, it's like, he had a team before there was a team that was even a thing, right? And so he kind of gave me some ideas about that without, giving away all his secrets. So I kind of dabbled in that, and, I had an assistant early on, and I had a buyer's agent early on. I just couldn't quite figure it all out. So I found somebody else who was also a top producing guy in the world. And I paid to go spend a week with him and just kind of check his operation out. And he was gracious enough, of course I had to pay for it, right, to kind of lay out his playbook for me. And I took that and adapted it to me. So, probably from 2002 to 2007, when I was at RE/MAX, I had a team. I had buyer's agents. I had an HR department. I had an in-house lender. Had all these things. And the one thing I realized is, you can't be successful without people, right? I mean, there's so much to do in this business. If you try to do it all by yourself, you're going to burn out. And so I was really on a good run there. And then, of course, 2008 happened. And, that was the major reset.
So how did you cope with 2008, the crash?
Oh, man. Looking back, if I'd have known then what I know now, it would have been different. I thought 2008 was just a blip in the market, that it would, only last a year when it lasted a lot longer than that, 4 years. I pretty much lost everything I had at that point, all the properties I owned, my own home. I mean, it was brutal. I learned a lot. I didn't file bankruptcy during that time, although if I'd have known, I probably should have. But I also learned how to negotiate short sales for me and others. And it was really an interesting learning experience.
That's good that you were able to take that and move forward, where a lot of real estate agents literally filed bankruptcy, they quit the business.
I quit the business for 4 years.
Yeah.
So 2008 to 2012, I was negotiating out all the debt. By 2014, I'd pretty much lost everything and I was just beat up. So I literally did not do anything from 2014 until I got back into the business in 2018.
And what made you get back in after not doing any deals?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have somebody in my life that came and shook me awake and said, "What are you doing? You need to get back in the game." And I'm thankful for that, because not sure where I'd be if someone didn't seek me out, because I was not in a good mindset during that time. I had went from millionaire to nothing. And I'm just thankful that I pulled my head out.
Sure. What skill set helped you in the real estate world that you took from being a chef?
people management.
Yeah.
You know, in that business, you have a lot of different people in the restaurant business, and you know, you've got front of the house people, you got back of the house people, you have corporate executives, you have accounting, and your vendors. And there's a lot of moving parts in a restaurant, just like in real estate. And you know, you get a lot farther with kindness than not being nice. And you know, it's funny when I watch that Hell's Kitchen, and you know, they get all mad and you know, throw stuff and all that. It's really like that. And it's interesting how people take their food seriously, and rightfully so. I mean, you're paying a lot for a meal, and the restaurants that I was in at the time, our prices were high compared to what a meal would go for during that time. So you know, you mess it up, somebody's going to be upset. And yeah, there was some times where I remember one time Mother's Day. Mother's Day was always a huge deal. It took days to prep for it, and one of my sous chefs made this 50-gallon pot of chicken a la king or something like that that spoiled because he didn't refrigerate it quick enough. And so one of the GMs at the time come back there, and this was going to be like a major part of the Sunday brunch, and now, you know, it's not like you could whip up something else in an hour and make it. So he got mad, threw it on the floor, 50 gallons of chicken a la king all over the restaurant, you know, fired the guy, fired the sous chef right before Mother's Day brunch. So that was fun.
A little bit of scrambling at the end.
A little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So would your meals, what would Gordon Ramsay say about your meals? Do you think he'd be approving of them, or?
I think I love the food industry because, like, here in Portland, we are blessed. We have so many different concepts. Yeah. When I graduated, I had to leave town to get a job because literally there was only 2 decent restaurants in Portland at the time: Benjamin's at Pac West Center, and Atwater's at the top of the bank, which is now Portland City Grill. Mm-hmm. So the level of food back then is not what it is today. And we always laugh because, you know, some of the combinations people come up with today, like, who would even think of that, right? So I think our quality was good. I mean, everything about our restaurants was good and higher end. It just wasn't as creative as what it is now. I mean, our claim to fame back then was that we would have fresh seafood from all over the world that would get flown to us almost, I think it was bi-weekly at the time. And, you know, just the logistics of that, because, you know, to get the fish and then get it distributed and then they get it to the locations, get it picked up, get it prepped, that was huge back then. It's not like today where, you know, stuff shows up overnight. That was a huge deal.
Yeah, how would that work with East Coast to West Coast?
I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Yeah. I mean, we would get whole swordfish that would be, you know, from Mexico or Hawaii or whatever, and you know, that was a big deal. And sometimes odd stuff like opaka paka and mahi mahi and, you know, parrotfish and all this weird stuff, that live Maine lobsters. Okay, we used to get those a lot, and you know how they would get those from Maine to us on the West Coast and still be alive. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, they don't have the way that they can do it now.
I don't know, man. It was pretty cool though.
What is the one thing you wish you knew before you started real estate?
Well, I think that would be, I would have invested more. I mean, I did have a lot of investments prior to the crash, and you know, I still invest. But had I not lost all that I lost in 2008, you know, some of those properties I paid, you know, what would be considered pennies today. So, you know, if there was any advice I could give, you know, whether it's buying your own home or buying in a rental property or buying a piece of property to develop or something, you know, you can make a lot of money in brokerage, but you can also make a lot of money in real estate. And when it's what you do, if you haven't been through it yourself, it's hard to tell somebody else about it. So, I think that's a good learning lesson. I know it's harder today because prices are so high, but, whether that's, super small scale or a larger scale, there's always a way to get in. And I think that's important as a broker.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, but in 2020, you had a big event.
I did. Yeah.
How did that change how you view the world?
That is that was a huge reset. So I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I don't say I have to go to work. I say that I get to go to work. Yeah. That event changed my life. Not all good, but not all bad. I'm still struggling with it. It's a daily thing, but I also still show up. I'm still here. I'm still engaged. I'm thankful that I'm still here.
And you're newlywed?
Newlywed, yeah. Yeah. Never thought we would get married, but the morbid and truth about that is it's easier to settle an estate when you're married than it is when you're not. And if things don't go my way, my life could be cut short. But I'm planning on being here for at least 30 more years.
But you're spending more time, I think, going on little vacations.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think you would have been doing that had that event not happened?
Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. When I look at my real estate life prior to 2008, I didn't travel as much as I do now because I was always doing it. And, it gets back to when you love what you do, it's not really work. But I realized I missed a lot of opportunities because there's more to life than just real estate transactions. And, there's a lot of places that I would love to see that I haven't been to yet. And, people used to tell me this when I was young, like they'd say, travel. It will help you in your business because it helps you reset your mind. And I would think, that can't be true. And it's really true. If you can just step away, whether it's a weekend or a week or whatever, and just try not to be immersed in your real estate business, you truly come back, refreshed. My previous self would have never believed that, but I'm now living that, and I'm probably busier now than I ever have been, but I'm also taking time out for myself, and that's super important.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So, well, tell us about you and where people can find you.
Well, usually anywhere in one of our PPG offices.
Premier Property Group.
Premier Property Group, yep, here in the Portland metro area. We have 21 offices. I'm blessed enough to be a reviewing broker here, so I help a lot of agents in this company. I mentor a lot of agents in this company. So at any time, you can find me here at any one of the offices or out in the field selling houses.
Yeah. Phone number, website?
Website is grabthegoldkey.com. I'm the team leader of the Gold Key team here at Premier. And cell number is 503-939-9353. Had that same phone number for 30 years. That's an accomplishment itself.
That itself, I have my personal phone number that I've had for probably close to 17 or so years now, and yeah, I don't want to get rid of it.
For sure not, especially in this business.
Well, with your business, yeah, how many years you've had that phone number?
Almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years? Yeah, you don't want to change that.
Yeah, I think my first phone with that phone number was the brick phone.
Oh, yeah.
And to go back to the BMW conversation, that's exactly why I bought the BMW, because the brick phone would fit perfectly in the console. And
back when a phone call cost you like $5 for like 1 minute.
Well, my first cell phone was like the one that was in a bag that looked like you were going to call in a military airstrike. Yes. And my first real estate car was a Honda Civic, and it smoked so bad that I was embarrassed to take people in the car. And then you put the cell phone in the passenger seat, and that was like the entire passenger seat. So when I bought that BMW, I went to Cooney, because the office that I was at the time was on Cedar Hills Boulevard, and I drive by there all the time, and I had my eye on this BMW. And I went there, and the guys, going, well, what BMW are you interested in? And I had this brick phone with me, and I wanted the 325i, but I wasn't sure. And when I saw this area in the console, and I put the brick phone in there, it's like, this is the one.
That was your only stipulation.
That was it.
What car you're going to buy.
The guy's like, do you want to drive anything else? Nope, this is it.
I don't even have to take it on a test drive.
Nope.
Well, Don, thanks for sitting down with me. I appreciate.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and
let's do this again.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you've got so many more stories.
Oh,
we
man.
need to hear them.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, from closing down kitchens to closing deals, Don Johnson with Premier Property Group, and this was a key conversation.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.